Congressional elections are interesting because of the incumbency advantage. Incumbents are the people who currently hold the office. So right now, President Biden is currently the president, so he is the incumbent president. Now, the people currently serving in the House and the Senate are the incumbent Congress members. And incumbents are very likely to be reelected, and challengers are very likely to lose reelection. And unlike in most offices, there are no term limits. So if you are an incumbent, you really have pretty good job security for as long as you want to keep the job. And Mayhew, the scholar who came up with that phrase electoral connection, gives us some reasons why this is the case. He says that incumbents have a really big advantage because they're already in office, which gives them these tools like casework, franking, and the sort of easy way of position taking and credit claiming. Now, we should remember casework from our discussion of Congress. Casework is basically dealing with constituents' concerns, right? Congress members hear from constituents who are saying, this thing is going wrong with this federal office, help me out, right? I can't, I applied for a passport and an expedited one and it still hasn't come. Can you give me a hand? Or, hey, can you help me navigate the, Social Security process? That's casework. Now, franking is the ability to stamp things for free. When you mail a letter, you have to pay for a stamp, right? Well, when campaigns mail letters, they have to pay for stamps. And it's one thing paying for a single stamp, but when you're paying for a stamp to mail things to an entire congressional district, it's a lot more money, right? Now, sitting Congress members have the franking privilege. They can send mail to people in their district without having to pay for stamps. Now, they can't send campaign mail. Absolutely nothing campaign related. But they can send correspondence saying things like, hey, look at all the great stuff I've done over the last 2 years. So that's technically not campaigning, but it makes a very similar point to something a campaign might say. So they can't say, I did these amazing things, so vote for me next time. But they can say, I did these amazing things and leave it to you to think, oh yeah, they're saying vote for me. There's also an ease of position taking and credit claiming. If you are running for office and you do not yet hold the office, you can say, I believe this, I believe that, I will do this, I will do that. But if you're in the office already, you can sort of, to use a sort of common expression, can put your money where your mouth is. You can actually do things, right? And so you can take positions really easily. You can sponsor a bill. So now you're not just saying, I support this thing. You're saying, I support this thing so much, I'm trying to get the government to do something about it. I wrote a law about it. Now, we know that most bills don't actually pass and become laws, but you can still say, I took this position. Look at this bill. It's not my fault that it didn't get passed. Congress is dysfunctional. Congress is slow. But I tried. I took this position. I made it clear. I wrote a bill about this. And credit claiming is similar, right? If you're running for election, you can say, hey, I do this for the district. But if you are in Congress, you can do something for the district. You can get federal funding for federal projects in the district. Maybe the interstate that runs through your district needs some repairs, or you want a new exit made off of it. If you're in office, you might be able to get that done. And interestingly, there are things that Congress members take credit for that may not even really be totally due to them. For example, if you live in a district with a major university, odds are researchers at that university got federal funding for their research, right? They applied to a federal agency, like, for example, medical research, the National Institutes of Health, for sort of a lot of material science research. You can get funding from the Department of Defense. So, you might be doing any of these things, environmental research, maybe the EPA. So these researchers will apply for these grants and they'll contact their Congress member and say, hey, can you write me a letter of support for this? The Congress member will likely farm that out to a staff member. When I was an intern, I drafted several letters of support. And then obviously they'll review it and make sure it's appropriate and, them, but what they want to say. But that's the extent of it. They basically read a letter and sign it. And it goes in the package to this federal agency for the grant. And if they get it, if the researcher gets it, the Congress member will then say, hey, look, I brought research funding to my district. Did they really? I mean, sort of, right? They wrote that letter of support. And of course, they passed the budget that allowed for this research funding to exist in the first place. But how much credit do they really get to claim on it? Well, a decent amount, because they just do. And for the most part, people are like, oh, hey, money back for the district. That's good. So if you aren't in office, you just can't do that, right? You just literally don't have the ability to claim credit for money that's coming back because you had nothing to do with it. Whereas at least if you're in Congress, you had a little something to do with it. So these three things really help solidify the incumbency advantage. And all three of these do that, at least in part, by increasing name recognition and also positive affect. So name recognition, if you are getting franked mail and you see it in your mailbox, you probably, hey, my congressperson sent me this. If you have gone and gotten help for something, you're certainly going to know who you've asked for help. And if you see them on TV claiming credit for a big project in your district that maybe helps you, maybe bringing back funding for the MTA, getting federal funding for, improving signaling, right? There's always signal errors that cause delays, right? So federal funding for that, you're going to like, oh, hey, that's helpful. And remember the person's name. And you're going to remember that they've done something good. And that leads us to positive affect. Basically, you like the person more. And if they help you out by, expediting that passport, you're going to be happy. You're going to like them more. And you might even be willing to vote for a Congress member who isn't of your party if they've helped you enough. In fact, Congresswoman Slaughter routinely got a larger share of the vote than did the Democratic presidential candidate at the top of the ticket. So, for example, when Hillary Clinton was running for president back in 2016, Congresswoman Slaughter actually got more votes than Hillary Clinton, even though they were both Democrats, and we would expect that people would just vote for the Democratic candidate and then for Democrats down the ballot, or the Republican candidate and Republicans down the ballot. But so many people in the district knew Congresswoman Slaughter and had been personally helped by her and had, seen all these great projects that she'd helped bring back to Rochester. Filling in the inner loop, which was a major urban restoration project, getting a new track for Amtrak so freight trains wouldn't be holding up Amtrak trains, getting a high-speed link between Rochester and Buffalo. All these things were things she claimed credit for and was in fact involved with. And that made people like her, right? It was good stuff for the district. People knew who she was and liked her and voted for her, maybe even when they weren't Democrats, as she did happen to be a Democrat. So we can see then that the incumbency advantage can be very strong and really help the person in office.